Let's cover EF Core real quick. Reworked Link. They did a bunch of stuff to make these expressions better. And if you've at all looked at those, I mean, my hat's off to the team. They're doing an awesome job of building the SQL that I would never even dream of writing. And I'm glad I don't have to write, but it's faster and better, more goodness. The big thing here is you now get a runtime exception for client-side query evaluation. And what that means is this. If we pop in here and we look at, which one? Context tests, right here. So here I have created a database context. If you're unfamiliar with in-memory databases, anybody use in-memory databases for their testing? Yeah, great way to do it. This is not a relational database. It is just an in-memory thing that kind of works like a relational database and will trick you a lot into thinking it's a relational database, but it's not. So just be aware of what it's good for, but it works great for cases like this. And here we're going to new one of these things up, and we're going to add some superheroes to it. We're going to save our changes, which really doesn't do anything. It just makes them available. And then we're going to say, hey, there's 2 of them. Now, I am going to say superheroes where I have a method called starts with. So right here, if we navigate in here, I have a method called starts with. This is going to see if the super name starts with a particular set of characters. And when I run that, it is going to throw an exception. Because in order to evaluate that, it has to run code that is inside of my object. It cannot execute that on the server, right? Because logic is written in C#, and it can't interpret that into a SQL server or whatever the heck you're going off of database call. And what it used to do is it would just say, oh, they want to run a little thing here locally. Let me just pull all the rows back, and I'll just evaluate them all one at a time. And while that gets the job done, it's not, you're kind of scratching your head. It's like, why is this thing so slow when I run it on 1,000,000 rows? Well, it's because all the rows are coming back to your client, and it's evaluating every single one of them. And so rather than doing that, they're going to throw, unfortunately, a runtime exception, which is really all you can do. I would love to have a compile time exception, but you're getting a runtime exception off of this one right now. Yeah, I'm not sure how you get it any other way. Now, however, this line works. Why does this work? This one runs just fine. Right. What's 2S doing? Yeah, so if you want it to work like it used to work, this is how to make it work like it used to work. You just go toList, it's going to call the records back, and then you're going to evaluate them on the client. So now, if you want to make it work on the server side, this is what you do. Why does this work? It's the same code, isn't it? Exactly. So you got it. So in one case, I'm calling a method. It doesn't know how to look into that method and figure out what I'm doing. In this case, it says starts with. Oh, great. I know how to deal with starts with. I'm going to interpret it into a like clause or whatever I'm going to do to make that work in SQL Server land and be able to ship that off. So just be aware. This is something that's going on. I think, honestly, it's a good change because I've been bitten a number of times by, oh, man, it's EF. I didn't intend to do it, and so I'd rather get the exception on something I didn't intend to do. Great. Let's see. Cosmos DB, if you haven't looked into that, it's a good thing. It's distributed databases in Azure. Distributed SQL databases are very, very, very difficult. And this is a way to do it. .NET EF, if you're tooling for your .NET EF migrations, if you've run those migrations, they are now an external tool that you have to install. You can install them once, install them globally, install them per project, whatever you want to do. But you have to run another command to do it. If you try to run them, this is what you're going to run into. You can now intercept database operations before they go to the database or after they come back to allow you to intercept all operations. This is kind of cool, especially if you're building kind of frameworky kind of stuff. Interestingly enough, EF 6.3 full framework runs on .NET Core 3.0, which is pretty amazing when you think about it, that they figured out how to do that. That is really, really cool stuff. So old full framework library, this EF, the .NET Core is now fully featured enough that you can run the old version of it on there. I'm not sure why you'd want to do that. unless you wanted a many-to-many automatic join table, which they may add at some point in time. It does have nullability support, and beware when you turn on the nullability, the non-nullable, like can't we just have a word that means not nullable, that is not a double negative? I wish there was like, it's a real thing, or like whatever the word is, but we obviously don't have that word. Mark will figure that out, Kevin. They're MVPs, they can do that stuff. That's really good stuff. And lazy loading from 2.1, but it's the devil, don't use it. If you're using lazy loading, just try to say no to lazy loading because it will just cause you many, many headaches. Be explicit whenever you can. I just had to throw that one in. It's just my little vendetta against lazy loading for using it for years and then being bitten a lot of times. Yeah, go ahead. Many-to-many still requires an intermediate table. They have not added that. And I have really mixed feelings about it. There's some really nice things about the way the older version, the full framework version of EF works. I guess you could go back and use 6.3 if you want to because it supports it. It doesn't. And I didn't look to see on the roadmap when that's coming. I'm guessing they'll probably add it, but they haven't added it yet. Again, I don't feel horrible about it being a little more explicit, but it is nice, especially if you're doing it a lot with things like tags.